If you're learning a new language, sometimes seeking advice from a native speaker of that language is not the best idea, and I'll explain why. So I became a fluent speaker of Spanish within about 4 to 5 years. And I've actually tried teaching English to Spanish speakers as a way to help out and just because I figured that I would be good at it, right? Since I am a native speaker of English after all. I found out pretty soon after, though, that it was a disaster and that I was not the best teacher of English. But once I started teaching Spanish to English speakers, it was a lot better. Figured out that I was actually a pretty darn good teacher of it. In fact, I found that when I was trying to teach English to Spanish speakers, I just found myself referring a lot to my Spanish-speaking friends and trying to figure out how they learned this concept or how they figured out this weird thing in English. And then I would just take what I learned from them and try to teach that to the people that were learning English. So it was a pretty big disaster. And the reason for this is pretty simple. When you're a native speaker of the language, you're just, as a baby, absorbing the language. You're constantly being exposed to it. You're speaking it yourself, and you're not really piecing together these grammar concepts or why this is the way that it is, or what's the difference between a direct pronoun or a direct object, and you don't care about any of that stuff. You're just using the language. I mean, how many times has this happened to you where you've had someone who's learning English ask you, hey, why is it this way? Why do you say this way and not this way? And your response is oftentimes just, that's just the way it is. And we don't actually explain to them why it is that way. We just know that it sounds weird if you don't say it that way. Whereas if you were to ask someone who's had to learn that language themselves as an adult or someone who's not a baby, then they've actually had to work out why it is the way it is, or why that is said in this way and not this other way. So they're able to tell you why it is that way in a more logical way. Because when we're learning languages as adults, we're trying to put everything together logically rather than just listening and being exposed to the language and trying to use it like a baby would. So if you're trying to piece together a concept that you just don't understand in the language, try finding someone who had to learn that language as a second language, because they've already had to figure out why it is the way it is. And 9 times out of 10, they'll be able to explain that concept to you better than a native speaker would be able to. This is just one of those tips that's going to help your language and learning journey. And it's something that helped me once I figured it out. Some of my best teachers of Spanish were people that were actually Americans who had had to learn Spanish themselves as a second language. And a lot of times the native speakers would, if anything, confuse me even more. It's because they weren't able to explain things to me in a way that I would understand. If you want more language learning tips, especially Spanish language learning tips, because that's what I teach Spanish. I don't teach English because I've been there, done that kind of thing. I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to this channel, especially if you're learning Spanish. I'd be happy to help you with any sort of concept or anything that you're stuck on and need help with. Take care.